Imagine an America wrapped in absolute punishing silence. I mean, no interstate highways cutting through the mountains, no airplanes tracing the sky, no cars, just vast, formidable distances that completely isolated communities, literally turning neighboring states into entirely separate worlds. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're traveling nearly 200 years into the past, kind of pulling back the curtain on the gritty, true events that actually forged the United States. We're going to explore the unbelievable origin story of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad and how a super daring gamble on just a few pieces of iron fundamentally altered the trajectory of human history.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think about the staggering contrast in how we experience distance today versus back then. Today, if you need to travel 100 miles, you just hop in a car, turn on some music, and boom, you arrive in under 2 hours. You probably don't even think twice about it, right? It's just a trivial errand. But in the 1820s, that exact same 100-mile journey would eat up nearly an entire week of your life. You'd be completely at the mercy of horse-drawn wagons, navigating these wild, untamed rivers, and just trudging through relentless, exhausting elements. Literally every single mile was a brutal physical battle against the American landscape. And this harsh reality created what historians often call a massive logistical bottleneck, basically a muddy American nightmare. See, the young country had recently doubled its formidable footprint thanks to the Louisiana Purchase back in 1803. Settlers were just eager to push out into the western frontier, and ambitious businesses were desperately trying to expand their reach. But they violently collided with geographic friction. Transportation wasn't just agonizingly slow, it was ruinously expensive. I mean, dirt trails would literally dissolve into thick, axle-deep mud after a single rainstorm. Heavy cargo, vital supplies, and completely exhausted travelers would find themselves hopelessly trapped for days on end, just waiting for the earth to dry. Horses broke down, wagons splintered. The friction of the land was literally choking the nation's potential.
So that leaves us with a seemingly impossible question. How do you connect a sprawling, muddy nation? River transportation definitely offered some relief, sure, but rivers were stubborn. They only flowed where nature intended, which was rarely where businesses actually needed them to go. Oh, and they froze solid in the winter. Moving agricultural yields from rural farms into those rapidly growing eastern cities cost so much capital that a lot of businesses barely survived the suffocating shipping fees alone. It became glaringly obvious to American leaders that without a drastically faster, more reliable method to move massive quantities of people and goods, well, the nation's immense economic growth was going to hit a brutal wall and just stagnate entirely. Well, the solution didn't materialize from political debates in Washington. Nope. Instead, it emerged from a revolutionary, incredibly risky technological gamble: iron rails. In 1828, America decided to bet its entire future on a totally unproven concept. Construction officially began on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, or as it's famously known, the B&O. This was America's very first public railway, and its mission was highly ambitious, honestly borderline arrogant for the era. The goal was to carve a path straight through the mountains and connect the bustling port city of Baltimore directly with the raw, expanding western frontier. Guys, this wasn't just a new business. It was a highly experimental leap of faith in the terrifying, untested power of steam. And let me tell you, at the time, the skepticism surrounding this technology wasn't just palpable, it was terrified. Actually, scratch that. People were absolutely petrified. Leading voices and respected medical minds genuinely believed that moving faster than 20 miles per hour would literally crush the human body. Seriously, they argued that our lungs wouldn't even be able to breathe at such blinding velocities. On top of that, critics were absolutely certain that heavy metal locomotives could never physically generate enough traction to climb steep hills. The sheer audacity of replacing familiar, living horsepower with these fire-breathing iron machines felt entirely unnatural. The fear of catastrophic failure was literally everywhere. But look at how rapidly this immense pressure built up and just completely shattered those doubts. First, you have the massive land acquisition in 1803, expanding the map, right? Which directly triggers that crushing transportation crisis of the 1820s we talked about, ultimately forcing the groundbreaking of the B&O in 1828. Brilliant engineers simply pushed right past the terror. They just went for it. As those first few miles of heavy track began to carve their way westward, the impossible quickly became undeniable reality. The initial skepticism, it faded into absolute wide-eyed awe. And just like that, America was violently and beautifully thrust right into the age of steam. This technological leap absolutely ignited the American economy. The railroad was never just a vehicle for moving passengers. It became the ultimate cyclical catalyst for the Industrial Revolution.
It's like a giant puzzle locking into place. A massive, interconnected loop of heavy industry emerged almost overnight, driven entirely by the ravenous hunger of the expanding tracks. Think about it. The railroads needed iron to build the rails. That iron required massive amounts of coal to forge. And that coal? Well, it required more trains to transport it, so iron production skyrockets. Coal mining expands massively just to feed those roaring steam engines. Steel manufacturing eventually grows at this unprecedented rate. Suddenly, millions of tons of raw materials were demanded, and thousands upon thousands of new jobs were instantly created to feed this relentless industrial machine.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the direct, unstoppable chain reaction this triggered across the market. With trains running, factories could suddenly receive massive, reliable shipments of raw materials faster than ever before in human history. And because those transportation costs completely plummeted, the overhead for manufacturing dropped right along with them. Consequently, the prices of everyday goods fell significantly for the average consumer, and as a result of those lower prices and higher availability, domestic trade utterly exploded. Manufacturers could suddenly ship their finished products across incredibly vast distances. They were forming the sturdy iron backbone of a brand new, highly interconnected national economy. But hey, the economic boom was just one facet of the story. Perhaps the railroad's most breathtaking achievement was physically opening the American West to mass settlement. We're talking manifest destiny in action. Pioneers who previously would have spent months risking their lives, their families, and their fortunes on perilous wagon trails could now travel farther, faster, and safer than ever before. Wherever those iron tracks went, civilization immediately followed. New towns, schools, churches, and bustling commercial centers didn't just casually appear, they firmly anchored themselves to the iron arteries alongside the rails. Entire thriving communities were born essentially overnight, directly sustained by the lifeline of the locomotive. The sheer magic of this transformation really cannot be overstated. I mean, a brutal, punishing journey, moving heavy goods that historically consumed months of human life and labor, was suddenly condensed into mere days of routine transit. It's a total game changer. Almost overnight, the booming, smoke-filled factories of the East Coast found themselves intimately connected with the vast, fertile agricultural expanses of the West. Distance, which had literally been the single biggest, most impenetrable obstacle to human progress for millennia, simply no longer stood in the way of American opportunity. Space and time had effectively been conquered. So the United States was no longer just growing in square mileage, it was truly becoming united in practice. The railroads took what was essentially a loose, fragile collection of distant, isolated states, separated by daunting geography, weeks of travel time, and treacherous terrain, and seamlessly bound them together into one singular, connected nation. It shifted the entire psychology of the country. It proved once and for all that the vast, intimidating American landscape could actually be tamed, conquered, and traversed safely by human engineering. And that profound legacy continues to beat in the heart of the country today, to the tune of millions of Americans who still rely on rail travel every single year. While we might look up at the sky and take the convenience of modern air travel totally for granted, or easily cruise down our interstate highways, the fundamental revolutionary concept of cross-country, high-speed public connection traces its roots directly back to those very first steam engines chugging defiantly out of Baltimore. They laid the literal groundwork for modern mobility. But it goes far beyond just passenger travel. To put it into perspective, today, billions of dollars in vital goods flow through the silent, steady heartbeat of our modern supply chain via massive freight rail networks. It is the invisible force keeping our grocery shelves stocked and our factories running across the continent. And every single ton of that cargo, it all traces back to that one insanely bold, incredibly risky idea to lay iron tracks across the muddy American frontier. What started as just a few miles of experimental track fundamentally became the unshakable foundation of modern America. The B&O Railroad completely transformed how Americans lived, worked, and saw their own country forever. It was a technological gamble that totally paid off by shrinking a continent and birthing an industrial superpower. But looking back at the audacity of those early engineers really forces us to look at the world today and ask a crucial question. What is the iron rail of our generation, and are we truly prepared for how it's going to reshape our future? If you enjoyed this explainer and love discovering the hidden forces and gritty, true events that built the world around us, make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching, keep questioning the world around you, and I'll see you in the next explainer.